Hey look, little flowers. Springtime is coming. I'm trying to hold all these papers flying everywhere. There's just something about coming out to your garden and you just feel like you can take a breath. It's like, feels nice, feels right, you know what I mean? Feels right. All right, let me put all these right here. Put a little mulch on top of here so they don't go anywhere. Stay. Welcome to my garden. This is Benj the garden guy, and I love to help you all, people like you all, transform your available space into edible and beautiful abundance. I love to help you take yard space and turn it into gardens to where you're going to be growing your own food. Right now this is not growing very much. I got some kale and collards over there and a little bit of Swiss chard, but just you wait. In a few months this is going to be just going crazy out here with beautiful, awesome, fresh as it gets. Anytime you're growing your own food, that is the freshest you can get food. So I love equipping you all with the best knowledge about how to do that, how to use your available space. You might just have a windowsill to where you can put some pots out there and then you can be growing some herbs, maybe some microgreens. You can be growing a lot of good food. Or like a patio space. I don't know exactly what your situation is, but my goal and this Garden Guy channel's goal is to help equip you to do exactly that and transform that space towards abundance. And I don't know about you, but I like to use cheap and easily accessible materials to where I don't have to go out there and buy bags of tons of organic material or of soil. And to a lot of us, there are some materials that are readily available and cheap. One of those is paper. As you can see, I've got some serious paperage right here. Paperage for sure, and different types that we're gonna be looking at. I don't know about you, but I like to have all my information in one place. A lot of times when it comes to figuring out what's okay to put into my garden, I would do my research, but I had to like look at all different types of sites. And I was like, man, I wish someone had already done that for me, to where it's an easy one place. You're gonna see the pros and the cons, an unbiased decision-making process to where you can be like, okay, there's pros and cons to this, and then you can make your own informed decision after that. I don't claim to be a perfect person and researcher, but I have done my research on paper, and where I've come to is what I'm about to show you. Okay, let's look at this. We've got white paper. We've got like these brown, you know, UPS or Amazon shipment packages. You got like glossy paper like this with all the deals and stuff on them. And then same thing here. You've got these newspapers. You can kind of hear it. You can always hear it whenever it's the more plasticky type paper. And kind of thicker pieces like this. So there's all kinds of paper. There's newspaper is another option. My trusty tripod. There we go. Let me set you up on this tripod and we will continue to think about the pros and the cons. Okay, here we go. Got this stuff here. What exactly are the pros and cons of using paper in the garden? I'm gonna be devil's advocate and start with cons. When it comes to cons, the first thought that I have had is, what about all like the plastic feel, like the inks that are used to, the dyes? Are those contaminants? Are those going to hurt the microbes in the soil? Are they going to potentially get into my food that I'm going to be eating and then affect me and my kids? Those are big concerns, and those are very valid concerns. The contaminants. Is paper going to be contaminating my body or even my soil? Based off of the research that I've done, which I don't claim to be an expert in this, but based off of that research, I've found that the toxins and the contaminants in paper used to be way worse. Even just 20-30 years ago, they were way worse. But because of folks like us, you and me, just common people, messaging those folks and making sure that they know we don't want to have these toxins in paper, they changed their regulations to where the majority of paper making companies have a set of guidelines that they have to follow for contamination. So there's a lot less than there used to be, for sure. Like for instance, newspaper. Newspaper used to have all of these heavy metals that were used to make the ink, but now they're using soy-based ink. So it's actually soy, not heavy metals. But then you have the argument that comes up, okay, well, what about the soy? Is that GMO soy? Or is what about the chlorine that is used a lot of times to make the paper white? So that's where you get into the GMO debate there, and I'm not going to get into that right now. Even though the microbes are breaking down the cellulose of the paper, there's still those remnants of the dioxins and other chemicals that are left. So that's where you have to make a decision yourself. Are you okay with trace amounts of, very small but trace amounts of those dioxins and other chemicals that are left in the soil? Is that okay with you? For me personally, I'm okay with that because I'm choosing the types of paper that have way less amounts of those chlorine and other materials. And to me, I don't use paper a ton. I don't use it a ton. I didn't use any paper in this garden. I did use cardboard, which is a type of paper. But when it comes to paper, I didn't use a ton, but I'm not against it. One other con of paper is that it's high in carbon. Basically, that's all it is. It has cellulose, which is from trees, and there's no nitrogen really. There's no other really minerals. It's mostly just a carbon source. So whenever you run into a whole bunch of paper in one area, that's going to tie up that nitrogen for a while at least, where those microbes are trying to eat or trying to break down that carbon, the cellulose, and make it available for the rest of the soil, but that takes time. So the initial thing that's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of nitrogen all of a sudden not available for your plants. So that's a potential con, is putting too much paper products in one area to where all that carbon is all tied up. Whenever I was in high school, I ran a CSA garden, basically a market garden, where I was growing an assortment of different vegetables and producing those for big families or just for individuals, fresh food every week. So during that process, in one section, I used a lot of paper. I put a whole bunch of paper. It was shredded paper and solid paper. Put it as a first layer, and then on top of that, I added other organic materials. That stuff was gone in a matter of months. Like, it was just gone. And I can say that that area has always done great. So long-term effect, at least 5 years, that was a beneficial thing. One of the cons that I ran into using paper in my first garden ever was I had a whole bunch of paper. It was all shredded up, and I put it in one spot, but then I didn't have anything on top of the paper. So what happened was it would dry out real quick. If it rained, it was all matted down. Then it would dry out, and then it would rain again, and then all of a sudden you have this thick layer, or not really thick, but like solid layer, to where all the different shredding pieces, they all matted down. And then the wind came and blew it off almost like one big chunk, because the wind could get underneath the paper. So that's a potential con, is it's super light and it can mat. So what you want to do is, if you do use paper, then try to mix it in with other organic materials. That's going to keep it loose and allow there to be soil to paper contact. If you just use a bunch of flat papers and go right on top, then that means all these layers in here are not having access to those microbes. That's going to really slow down the decomposition process. So those are my cons. Let's go into the pros. Tired of standing in one spot. Let's walk around a little bit. Here are the pros. Using paper is super cheap. I mean, free essentially if you're just getting it from around your house. And it is a way to add carbon to your soil. Now, carbon is wonderful in the sense that it helps your water holding capacity go up. So your soil that you have in around your garden or in your pots or anything like that is going to hold more water if it has more carbon in it. Another thing about carbon is that it makes it a happy environment for microbes. If you have a soil that is very low in carbon, then the microbes, it's almost like they don't have a home. you know, they're just kind of floating around. So giving them that carbon is going to be awesome. Right here, I have a whole bunch of carbon in this whole garden. I mean, we're talking quite a bit of carbon. The problem we can run into though is if we have too much carbon all at once. And that means all that nitrogen is tied up like we talked about earlier. So watch out for that. Really what we're getting from the paper is cellulose. Cellulose is what the microbes are going to break down to turn into carbon. So we're not really adding many minerals, if any. Really mostly what we're adding with using paper is carbon. Also, paper can be used kind of like cardboard to claim territory, to put down a thick layer of paper and then material on top of that like compost or wood chips, and that will be a first layer where the weeds can't pop through, they start dying off, and then you can have a garden like this, like a no-till garden. So those are the benefits. And me personally, I like paper. I like cardboard a little better, just because with cardboard, a lot of times it has one layer and then in between that is these corrugated, perforated, I think corrugated is the right word, little spaces to where it has spacers, and that's why it's kind of squishy when you squish it. That's a funny word, isn't it? Squish. Kind of funny. So you have those two layers and then the next layer on the bottom. So it's like a sandwich. Cardboard is kind of like a sandwich. But then when it comes to paper, you have just these solid sheets. So that's where you gotta watch out, is just putting too many of those solid sheets. Eventually, that does not break down as fast because it doesn't have any space in between. Shredded paper is gonna break down a lot faster, whether that's in your garden or in your raised beds or in a compost situation. It's going to break down a lot faster. Here are the types of paper I really would recommend you not put in your garden. Any type of glossy paper, which I've got here. See these? Whoops. See all this kind of thing? I mean, that's super glossy. You can tell it just has that sheen on it. That is not going to be good. It's not going to break down as fast. Usually it has a lot of different dyes in there, so there's a higher probability that it's not good for your garden or for your diet. Let me sit down here real quick. We also have, oops, these are going everywhere. That's the thing, is see how these are flying everywhere? Anytime you use paper, you're really gonna wanna put wood chips or something else organic material wise on top to hold it down. Otherwise it'll be flying everywhere. Same thing's glossy. I do like newspaper. Newspapers is a good option. You really gotta watch out for tricky pieces like this. See this right here? You'd think, oh, this is gonna break down, you know, this is okay. But then if you look at it, in between here, padding or stuff in between to keep it from kind of make it soft. So, gotta watch out for that. Sometimes you don't know what's hidden on the types of paper. White pieces of paper are great. I always like to use those. Bottom line is, there are pros and there are cons to using paper. When it comes down to it, it's gonna have to be a decision for you, your family to make. My personal opinion as garden guy is that I believe that paper can be a very cheap, a very helpful source of organic carbon. But there are some risks involved, and just be careful with that. Be careful with what you're putting in your body and what you're putting in your garden. Alright folks, I'm going to grab these pieces of paper, and actually what I'm going to do with these, the ones that are actually useful, I'm going to take them, put them in my compost pile, and by the time spring comes around they should be all ready to be decomposed and ready to put in the garden. Y'all, thanks for watching the Gardenguy channel, where we try to make sure everybody is helped out and we all have helpful and true information concerning gardening, growing your own food, edible landscaping, all that fun stuff. Keep dropping this. Anyways, before I pop off and say goodbye, I just wanted to say that I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. While I'm digging, just thought I'd mention, I do have a Patreon, to where if you guys are interested, I have some exciting, fun options there for extra bonus materials and some stuff also that's kind of near and dear to my heart that I would love to share on YouTube all the time, but just feel like I need to make it more of a special thing. So yeah, there's those options on my Patreon. I'll provide a link in the base there, or in the bottom in the description, and if you want to go look at those, you can. Just want to make sure you know those are available. I'm big time appreciative of everybody out there helping me make these daily videos that are intended to bless folks out all across the world and inspire. My goal is to equip and empower gardeners across the world to use their available space and steward it towards abundance. That's a big time theme of mine, and I'm excited to do that with you guys. All right, looks like a very few of these pieces of paper I brought out are actually what we talked about using, so those are the ones that are okay. Like I said, shredded is better, but there's not very many, so we're just gonna bury those and we should be good. Voila, that's good stuff. If you guys want to check out my video on cardboard, I'll pop up a link up there. You can look at that too. All right, folks, good times, good times. See you all next time on the Garden Guy channel.